Hi, this is Mary Jo Watts, and I'm going to take a look at the body of Hannibal Apéritif. And I've noticed some pretty interesting things about mainly transitions and coloring in the show, at least in this episode. So, what you're looking at is the episode itself in a stack. So, it's every screen cap from the end of the intro to the very end of the show, placed one on top of another, and then it's animated as if it's a regular film in a film strip here. But this is the top view of that stack. So imagine you are looking at a book, and this is the first page, and you rotate that book, and now you're looking at that book as if this were the back spine and this were the edges of the pages. So, what that does is it gives us a tremendous map that I've never been able to see in any other view before. This tells us not only how many shots are in the show, each striation is a different shot, but it also shows us the color schemes, the lighting schemes. It shows us the camera movement, which is my number one favorite thing about this. And if you're surfing around in here, you can see the transitions. It really gives you a really clear map once you're used to looking at these striations and kind of understanding what you're looking at. It gives you a clear map into the way that a show is constructed and what its hallmarks are. It's really fascinating. Okay, so this allows me to scrub through the show, the video. It's an animation of the stack, and you'll see here I've got these yellow lines, and they parallel the top view of the stack versus what I'm looking at in the frontal view of each screen cap. And I'm just going to go to the obvious places. Again, there are so many shots in this episode. It's kind of dizzying, and the intro is even more full of shots. And the thing to note is that I'm using this from screencap.net. I just slurped their screen caps. If I had a much larger sequence of screen caps and they weren't edited down, would be these striations would be much wider. This is a small view of it. I've got the TIFF for the full impact, but this kind of gives you a sense of the top of the stack in relationship to the show itself. So I'm going to go to some of the obvious places here. It's a little bit slow. I'm almost out of memory. I hope I can keep it. I might crash. No, there we go. So bear with. This takes a lot of memory. And I'm just going to assume that you know the show pretty well. And you get a sense here that we've got this coloring, sort of the maroon colors, that blood-like colors. But what you'll notice here is that you've got a scene that has a consistency of coloring and lighting, but you'll see that those red, maroon bits waver. It's not a straight vertical line. And that's because you're looking at a scene where there is camera movement, and that's basically that. You'll notice here that this is a scene as well, which is kind of interesting in comparison to Sherlock, like The Great Game. The scene is very similar, but there are shots within the scene, so they go back and forth, but they maintain some of that coloring. Anytime you have any sort of movement or jagged movement with a similar color, you've got camera movement. Or if I would expect these to be still, I'd have still coloring here if I had a still camera with an actor moving within the frame. But I'm just going to scrub through here. Yikes. And show you what we're looking at. Okay, so I'm going to scrub back to where we get that red. Now you'll notice this is really common in Hannibal, and I didn't notice it before. Color matching between scenes for transition is really common. So you might get a little bit of a false read thinking, oh, that these are all black in here, when actually it's different kinds of black and the editor's doing color matching, matching the transition on the color, with a colorist. It's pretty fascinating. Okay, so here we go. We're just going to scrub through here, and you'll see that the color is really pretty consistent. So we know we've got the color throughout the scheme, but here it gets a little jagged. Now we're moving through, the color disappears, but it's such a constant, that maroon is such a constant in the scene that it appears pretty regularly. So you'll see as we move along that maroon has changed a bit. If I blew this up, you would see those are different striations, and you could obviously that those are different shots in the scene. But and yeah, you'll see that there's a missing red right here. But we go back and forth, and the predominant view of the scene is from this angle. Again. Now another thing you're going to notice, it's hard to do this at this level, is a bit. You'll be able to when you zoom in and get used to it, see how it's moving here, and it's jagged. The colors are moving. It tells us that we're in the same shot in the same scene, but the camera movement is the camera's dynamic, and it's not crazy dynamic. It's just a little bit of hovering. I'm going to play the scene out so you can see. Watch Will. If you take a look at the windows here, or the mirrors rather, you'll see that they move up and down because the camera is moving. I'm going to rewind that. Yeah, so watch the static elements of the scene, and you'll see the camera is in. So there's so many shots within the scene and I don't have the full screen cap, so it's a little hard to catch, but watch those mirrors. It shows you that the camera is really dynamic in this scene. So there's a lot of really interesting camera work as well as editing. And it's just bobbing. It's just bobbing. Isn't this the same cinematographer who did Top of the Lake? I'm misremembering. Now see, you notice here something really cool's happened. We've gone from this background shade, and they've done on the transition, they've done a color match on that shade. So as I pull through, it's literally the same shade as these curtains. And so it looks at first when you're going through the striations as if it's the same scene. So that's where this episode gets a little interesting in comparison to something like Sherlock or Heaven Sent, Doctor Who, is that color matching. It's really common in this episode. So I'm going to let it play through, and you're going to see here that that those striations have the similar coloring, and that's where the color matching has come from, or how the color matching is displayed. And again, if I go back here, you'll see that I've got some constancy in this area of the frame. Back here. That also shows down here. That also shows that the camera is sort of being. It's weird because it's very similar. So, and I don't know that this could possibly be intentional. It could be, depending upon how anal the cinematographer is about framing, but or the camera operator. But you'll see here that there's a match in the scene on that maroon. So even though the actors fade in and out or cover it up, you'll see a constancy of the maroon even as the shots shift. So that's pretty cool. If we go back here, we'll see we've got this blue, and I wish I could blow it up right now because I've got limitations of the software. But you'll see here that we've got the constancy of shade and color, but we've got a lot of dynamism in the striations, which tells me that the camera's moving, that we'll possibly have wipes. So let's take a look. I don't know the episode that well. I'm just going to let it run a little bit. See, now again, this is really unusual. We've got a little bit of a darker striation, but it maintains this gray through different shots and different settings. Unusual. So we do have some camera movement in here. So that's what I expected to see. I'll show you in a sec. And then bam, we're into the darker colors. So if I move here, I'm just going to scrub as slowly as I can. So we have some static shots and the actors moving within them, and then these are quick, rapid, bam, bam, bam. The one thing that's keeping the scene from being dizzying, I honestly believe, is the coloring. Because there are so many shots back and forth that the coloring really does give you a sense of grounding. But again, this is a transition. Like, take a look at the cement. The colorist has got to be in on this. The cement matches as we move through here, because obviously it's going to match the walls. But look at their clothing. They've both got the gray, and then again the gray. And then as we do the wipe, well, it looks like it's a wipe from left to right, the color is matching on the outfits. And then you've got the vertical lines here in the wall. So it really is sort of meticulously matched. And then we get into a tint. There's a gray tint over. We don't have true whites back here, so that matches the tint of the cement. I hate to shudder what Thomas Harris would think of it. And that tint just overlays the whiteness, and you see the outfits. The color of the lighting here is a bit brighter than the color that you've got back here, but this color is a match on the previous tint. So the colorist is really, really working hard here. And again, what I would expect to see, those matches on color really display here, because in another show this might be one scene with different shots and actors moving within it. In this case, this is multiple scenes. Multiple scenes with similar coloring and similar, movement. But if you take a look at my Sherlock version, you'll see those striations are very solid, and you see the actors moving within them. You have more still camera. So yeah, anytime you see jagged edges, and there really isn't much still camera in this episode, anytime you see jagged edges, there's a bit of movement there. I think the closest thing to a still camera is what we're going to get in here, maybe. There's just so many shots in this episode. And it's got a lot of dynamism. But again, here, in another show, this striation might be a single scene with actors moving within it, if you look at this Sherlock. But it's the color matching. Makes it look like it's that the color gives it the scene a sense of consistency, even though there's so many shots. It gives a sense of boundary around the show. And then, of course, this ties back into the earlier sections here, this maroon. So, again, you've got the maroon matching that you had in the bathroom, but it's this sort of dark gray. And the matches work on the clothing, the costuming, and the color temperatures of the scene. So those are just some of the things that I noticed using this map. Again, if I blow it up, you can see eventually what particular camera movement you've got. You can see when you get used to it, whether it's a pan, whether it's handheld. It's fascinating to me. It's the only view I've ever seen of a film that can show me camera movement. So yeah, there we go.